all said and done, the Kogi and Bayelsa state elections have been won and lost. INEC has gone ahead to issue certificates of return to the winners, but some misgivings are still felt on the process and the outcomes of both elections. Joining us to analyze the process and outcomes is Tunde Ajibulu. He's a former member, Presidential Campaign Council, APC. He joins us from our Abuja studios. Many thanks indeed for joining us. Also, Ken Okolubo, a regular on the show, also a member of the Presidential Campaign Council for the Bayelsa elections, joins us via Skype from Victoria Island here in Lagos. And with me in the studio is Olufemi Lawson, a election observer with Women Arise. Many thanks indeed, gentlemen, for joining me on State of the Nation. Let's start with you in our Abuja studios. The complaints so far has risen from the Kogi and Bayelsa elections, having somewhat put the umpire, that's INEC, and indeed the process under a huge question mark. Akpoti for once and Wada, including Milaye in Kogi State, who were all contestants, believe that the process was marred by violence. Is that the case?
Good evening, Gimba. As in all elections, I will not say the Kogi election was a perfect election. There were, of course, pockets of violence, as was in the Bayelsa elections, as was in the Rivers elections. The bottom line that I see here is INEC has announced results. Governor Yaya Bello has won his his closest rival by 216,518 votes. In the case of Senator Dino Milaye and Senator Smart Adeyemi, it was termed inconclusive because, for obvious reasons, the differentials between them was less than the number of votes that were voided or numbers where elections were cancelled. It will be a really tough sell in the gubernatorial one to see how 216 and 518,000 votes will be voided and cancelled.
Okay, let me get you jump into this one and bring in your thoughts also. Mr. Okolubo, you were drafted to Bayelsa, and your candidate, Doye Diri, fell short of winning that elections in that state. Very interesting. What would you say played out? Was it the politics of numbers or was it the politics of interest?
Well, the truth about it, when you're in a Goa and we saw things for ourselves, a lot of people tried to change the narrative. The narrative cannot be changed. The CDD, the TMG, the international observers all described the Bayelsa election as one of the worst elections that I've ever held in Nigeria. It wasn't the PDP that was describing those elections. Remember, I was in this studio and I said clearly that Nembe, Braz, and Southern Ijaw were flashpoints, including Ogbe, where our former president comes from. If you recall what I said in that program, I was very worried about Nembe, particularly saying that most of the displaced people there were not allowed to go back to Nembe. Nobody is saying that PDP must always win elections. But when you win elections by brute force, it calls our electoral process to scrutiny. What kind of legacy does the APC federal government want to leave for the country? They're taking us back to the days before Jega, where we used to complain about election rigging and ballot box snatching. People are being killed. It's something that it wasn't the PDP saying it. It was those that observed the elections. And it's a far cry from the truth that what we saw in the Situation Room in Bayelsa was not exactly, did not reflect the true picture of what INEC announced.
Okay, let me bring you to Mr. Lawson, because you were there, you observed the processes for both elections. And Mr. Okolubo says that this is a brutal force that was being displayed in the process of these elections. What did you observe?
I think first and foremost, it's so worrisome when we refer to situations that we record the loss of lives of citizens as pocket of violence. It's quite worrisome. I think it is something that is enough to be declared, or to be referred to as a national emergency. I was in Bayelsa for about 11 days, pre and after the election. And you see, the summary of what was witnessed in Bayelsa State and Kogi State on November 16 was gunpoint democracy. You cannot elect representative of the people in their absence. The election on that day took away the power to elect these leaders from the citizens and gave it to non-state actors political thugs, aided in most cases by security agents. And that is why we kept calling on for the cancellation of that election, because it does not actually reflect the true aspiration of the people. And when we now refer to a situation where citizens are killed as pockets of violence, I think it's very, very unfortunate and unfair to our democracy.
What can be fair to to Nigeria's democratic process now if we have to look forward? Because some bills have been pending at the National Assembly. What would you advise? My advice is that we must make INEC truly independent, and INEC will never be truly independent without us looking for a reform that will ensure that INEC now has its own security, forces that will conduct this election. The role of the security forces, particularly the police, in these elections have become not only shameful, but anti-democratic. The police are conniving with non-state actors to manipulate this process, and it's very, very sad that the Inspector General of Police came and admitted that fake policemen disrupted the process of election in Bayelsa and Kogi State. In states where we have over 32,000 policemen in Bayelsa, over 35,000 policemen in Kogi, and you are admitting that non-state actors determined the outcome of the election. Okay, it's quite unfortunate. Let's go to Abuja again and hear from Mr. Ajibulu. In your view, what do we actually need to make this process cleaner?
Well, like the gentleman in Lagos said, I mean, number one, I will reiterate that there's no election that is worth any human life. It is dastardly, it should not happen. It is against all norms of human life. But unfortunately, in Africa, in Nigeria, it has been the norm for a while. And until we devolve from money politics, and the winner takes it all, and politics of desperation, I'm sorry, this will keep going on for a while.
What would you say must be done, especially when it comes to the Electoral Act? Can you give us any advice for the lawmakers?
Well, I will say the lawmakers, I believe the Electoral Act, as it were, I think is robust enough. It needs certain additions to it, no doubt. But we should. Violence is just not. It's just not the way. Violence is just not the way forward in this situation, and laws should be made to curb and punish violence during elections very, very stringently.
Let me get your final words as well, Mr. Ken Okolugbo, because this is turning out to be a very big concern for a lot of people, not only in Nigeria, but outside of this country, with respect to our electoral laws. What must we do at this point?
It's very clear that we can't do without electronic voting. What we actually witnessed in Bayelsa and in Kogi, where we lost the woman leader who was born to life, clearly shows you the desperation people can actually go, the extent which people can actually go to just to win elections. The amendments that have been presented by the Deputy Senate President is going to be very laudable if they are actually scaled through. Because first of all, we're not going to have accreditation done by way of using the electronic method and not by manual method anymore. And so when we now use electronic method in actually carrying out accreditation, people can come and snatch ballot boxes and voters register brazenly. The card readers will come to matter in any election. And that's exactly what we need to do. We all need to support this amendment, make it impossible for this kind of situation we found ourselves in Bayelsa. I'm shocked that the APC man in Abuja can even have, I'm happy I wasn't the one that condemned it, could have referred to the situations we found as pockets of violence, maybe because it was not on ground. It's a shame that this is a legacy they want to take this country back.
Okay, Ken. This will be a good place to let it rest. I do apologize for the very little time we have to spend with all of you three on the show. Ken Okolugbo, of course, he is indeed a regular on the show and also a member of the Presidential Campaign Council for the Bayelsa elections, as well as Mr. Tunde Ajibulu is a former member of the Presidential Campaign Council. He is of the APC in our Abuja studios, and with me here in the studio, Mr. Olufemi Lawson, an election observer with Women Arise. Many thanks indeed to all of you for talking to us here on State of the Nation, and to you for being a part of the show. Many thanks indeed for watching. I am Gimba Umar. See you next time.